Hello dear students, myself CMA Padmaja Buzruk. I will continue the topic accounting for shares and debentures. Please refer module number 1.1. I will discuss theory on calls in arrears, calls in advance and some illustrations on calls in arrears and calls in advance. First, let us see what is the meaning of calls in arrears. When shareholder fails to pay any installment due on shares, these unpaid amounts are known as call scenarios. Shareholders are supposed to pay various installments like allotment, call money, but if they do not pay these installments due on due date, then it becomes call scenarios. अगर शेयरहोल्डर ने ड्यू डेट पे जो अमाउंट उसे पे करनी है वो पे नहीं की तो वो हो जाती है कॉल सिनेरियोस. If not received at all, then the amount of calls in arrears which is not recoverable is deducted from called up capital which is shown by way of notes to balance sheet. ये जो calls in arrears वाली amount है वो called up capital से हो जाएगी minus and it is shown by way of notes to balance sheet. Now we'll see journal entries for recording calls in arrears, how it is to be shown by way of journal entries. Journal entry to record amount not received on any installment. Supposing if allotment or call money is received, your entry is bank to allotment or bank to share call. But if it is not received, then entry is calls in arrears to share allotment, calls in arrears to share call. So combined entry is bank account debit amount received on allotment or call, calls in arrears account debit amount which is not received on allotment or call which was due to share allotment or share call. Journal entry to record amount received subsequently. Supposing if this calls in arrears, it is not received on due date, but if it is received subsequently, बाद में फ्यूचर में मिला तो उसकी एंट्री कैसे पास करोगे? बैंक अकाउंट डेबिट टू कॉल्स इन एरियर्स. So once the money is received, calls in arrears account gets closed. Now we'll see illustration. Illustration 5. AB and Company Limited issued 5 crore equity shares of 10 each at a premium of 4 per share. Face value is 10, nominal value is 10, securities premium is 4. How company is expecting shareholders to pay this 10 plus 4? 1 on application, 6 on allotment including premium, 3 on first call and balance on final call. 1 plus 6 plus 3 is 10, 10 plus 4 is 14, 14 minus 10 is 4, final call money is 4 rupees. The shares were all subscribed and all money due was received except first call money on 1 lakh shares and final call money on 1,50,000 shares. Give journal entry to record the above transactions. There is default. First call पे default है, final call पे default है. On 1 lakh shares, first call money was not received and on 1,50,000 shares, final call money was not received. For easy calculation, we'll consider rupees in lakhs. So 5 crores का issue निकाला है, 5 crore divided by 1 lakh. We'll consider equity shares as 500. Application is 1 per share, allotment is 6 per share. It is 2 plus 4, 2 will go to capital, 4 will go to securities premium. First call is 3, final call is balance amount which is 4 which we have already seen. There is default on first call on 1 lakh shares. So if you consider rupees in lakh, default will be on 1 share. So the amount received on 500 minus 1, 499 shares. Final call का default है on 1,50,000 shares. 1,50,000 divided by 1 lakh. We are considering rupees in lakhs. So 1.5 share पे final call नहीं मिला है. So they have received final call money on 500 minus 1.5 which is 498.5 पे final call का पैसा मिला है. 1.5 शेयर पे फाइनल कॉल का पैसा नहीं मिला है. Don't forget to mention on top rupees in lakhs. Bank to share application 500 into 1. On 500 application they have received 1 per share. Transfer it to capital. Share application to share capital 500. Share application account gets closed here. Then allotment money due. Share allotment account debit to share capital to securities premium. Allotment की amount is 6 rupees. 500 into 6 3000. कैपिटल में जाएगा 2 रुपीज़, सिक्योरिटीज़ प्रीमियम में जाएगा 4 रुपीज़ पर शेयर. सो शेयर कैपिटल 500 इंटू 2 1000, सिक्योरिटीज़ प्रीमियम 500 इंटू 4 2000. So this is how this entry allotment due is to be passed. Share allotment account debit to share capital to securities premium. Bank account debit to share allotment 3000. Whatever was due has been received. There is no default in allotment. Now first call money due. Share first call to share capital. On 500 shares, 3 rupees per share first call money is due. Have they received whatever was due? No. There is default on 1 lakh shares. We are writing rupees in lakhs, so it is on 1 share there is default. So they have received on 499 shares. Bank account debit 499 into 3 1497. Calls in arrears account debit 3 rupees on 1 share not received to share first call. So share first call is getting closed here. 1500 debit, 1500 credit. Don't forget to mention on top in the corner right hand side rupees in lakhs. Then final call money due. Share final call to share capital on 500 at the rate of 4 is due. Share final call to share capital 2000. Have they received whatever was due? No. There is default on 1,50,000 shares. In lakhs it is 1.5 shares per default hai. So they have received on 498.5 shares at the rate of 4. Bank debit 498.5 into 4. Calls in arrears debit 6. 1.5 into 4 पे नहीं मिला है. To share final call. Share final call account is getting closed here. 2000 debit, 2000 credit. Now if you prepare cash book, कैसे दिखाओगे? एप्लीकेशन का मिला है 500, अलॉटमेंट का मिला है 3000, फर्स्ट कॉल का मिला है 1497, फाइनल कॉल का मिला है 1994. सो कैश और बैंक टू share application to share allotment to first call to final call. We have seen these entries. Total is 6991. By balance carried down 6991. Now calls in advance. अगर कोई शेयर होल्डर्स कुछ अमाउंट ड्यू ऑन कॉल पहले ही पे करता है, बिफोर इट इज आस्क्ड बाय द कंपनी टू पे, वो होता है कॉल्स इन एडवांस. It arises when there is oversubscription of shares and company decides not to refund excess application money received. It decides to adjust it against future calls. Then calls in advance will come into picture. Excess application money received is adjusted against amount due on allotment or calls. अगर ज़्यादा एप्लीकेशन आ चुके हैं और कंपनी ने डिसाइड किया ज़्यादा जो एप्लीकेशन आ चुके हैं वो एडजस्ट करेंगे अलॉटमेंट पे और कॉल पे, रिफंड नहीं करेंगे, देन इन दैट केस कॉल्स इन एडवांस आता है. समटाइम्स शेयर होल्डर पे एंटायर इशू प्राइस एट द टाइम ऑफ अलॉटमेंट इवन दो दे आर नॉट आस्क्ड फॉर, रिजल्टिंग इन कॉल्स इन एडवांस. समटाइम्स शेयर होल्डर्स pay the amount in advance without company ask them to pay for it. शेयर होल्डर को पूछा ही नहीं है कि बाबा आप पैसा पे करो, फिर भी वो पे करता है, तो रिजल्टिंग इनटू कॉल्स इन एडवांस. ऑन द बैलेंस शीट डेट बैलेंस ऑफ कॉल्स इन एडवांस इज शोन अंडर अदर करंट लायबिलिटीज. जो कॉल्स इन एडवांस का पैसा कंपनी को मिलेगा वो कहाँ पे दिखाएंगे? बैलेंस शीट में दिखाएंगे अंडर अदर करंट लायबिलिटीज. इट इज़ नॉट टू बी शोन अंडर शेयर कैपिटल, रिमेंबर दिस. अभी जर्नल एंट्रीज देखते हैं कॉल्स इन एडवांस के. जर्नल एंट्री टू रिकॉर्ड अमाउंट रिसीव्ड एज एडवांस विथ एप्लीकेशन. अगर आपको एप्लीकेशन का पैसा मिलता है तो व्हाट एंट्री यू पास? बैंक अकाउंट डेबिट टू शेयर एप्लीकेशन. जो एक्सेस मनी मिला है दैट गेट्स ट्रांसफर्ड टू कॉल्स इन एडवांस. So share application to calls in advance. And for adjusting these calls in advance against allotment and call, your entry would be calls in advance debit to share allotment to share call. So यहाँ पे आपका adjustment के बाद calls in advance account gets closed. Journal entry to record amount received as advanced with allotment or call. Sometimes shareholders pay advance money even if they have not asked to pay, so that time bank to calls in advance entry is to be passed. And for adjustment of calls in advance entry, calls in advance to share call. So when you adjust this, your calls in advance account gets closed. Now we'll see illustration 6. GH and company issued 5,000 equity shares of 10 each as par payable 2 on application, 4 on allotment, 4 on first and फाइनल कॉल. 5,000 इक्विटी शेयर्स का इशू निकाला है. फेस वैल्यू 10 है. कंपनी हैज आस्क्ड टू पे इन इंस्टॉलमेंट्स एप्लीकेशन अलॉटमेंट एंड फर्स्ट एंड फाइनल कॉल. 2 + 4 makes 10. Shares were all subscribed, all amount were duly received. There is no default. सब 5,000 शेयर्स का एप्लीकेशन मिल चुका है एंड ऑल अमाउंट्स दे हैव रिसीव्ड. One shareholder holding 200 shares paid the call money along with allotment money. Amount was subsequently adjusted. Pass journal entries to give the effect of the transaction. So एक जो shareholder था जिसके पास 200 shares थे, he has paid call money along with allotment. Allotment के साथ उसने call का पैसा भी दे दिया है. तो ये हो चुका है calls in advance. This advance money was subsequently adjusted. So they have asked you to pass journal entries. Now we'll see how to pass journal entries. On 5,000 shares, they have received application money at the rate of 2. So bank to share application 5,000 into 2, 10,000. Application will get transferred to share capital account. Share application to share capital 10,000. Here your share application account is getting closed. Next is allotment money due at the rate of 4. So allotment to capital 5,000 into 4. Whatever was due they have received. Bank to allotment 20,000. Here your allotment account is getting closed. But one shareholder who was having 200 shares, he has paid call money with allotment. So bank to calls in advance 800. Now first and final call due on 5,000 shares at the rate of 4 per share. First and final call to share capital 20,000, 5,000 into 4. Now they have received only on 4,800 shares out of 5,000 shares, because on 200 shares the person has already paid with allotment. So bank account debit 4,800 into 4, 19,200. Calls in advance debit 800 to share first and final call 20,000. Share first and final call is getting closed here, and if you see calls in advance you have credited and now you have debited calls in advance with the same amount 800. Calls in advance account is also getting closed. That is how journal entries for calls in advance and calls in arrears are to be passed. Thank you.